Okay, for this topic, for topic number 14, we're working with expected value. This is the kind of a problem that is very common in real life, so this is, in your test question, will be pretty similar to this one. So we have the volleyball team is selling boxes of flavored popcorn. 20% of the sales are cheese popcorn. That's why this is 0.2. 50% are caramel. That's why that one's 0.5. And 30% are the deluxe mix. Notice these add up to 100%. Now we want to know how much on average does the volleyball team expect from each sale of popcorn. And basically we're asking what is the expected cost for one box. So when we go to calculate this out, we have for the cheese, they're selling at $10 and 20% of them are that. So they're making basically $2 from the cheese, 18 times 0.5 for the caramel, 22 times 0.3 for the deluxe. So if we look at it, it says 20% were cheese, 50% were caramel, 30% were 22. We expect on average to get about 1760. Now if these were all equal, we just add those numbers up and divide by 3. This is also called a weighted average. So that's another place where you're using these things, like your grades are a weighted average. So let's say the team sold 500 boxes of popcorn, but they only get to keep 25%. Well, they're making $17.60 per box sold times 500 sold, but they're only going to keep a fourth of it, so times 0.25 means they should get $2,200. Okay, working with SOHCAHTOA and finding missing sides. So remember, some of you are having trouble with recognizing the triangles. One difference between adjacent and opposite, the adjacent sides of it on an angle touch the angle. The opposite side does not. So that's one way to make that distinction, because most of you are recognizing that this is the hypotenuse, but then you get stuck on which one's adjacent, which one's opposite. The opposite side is the one that doesn't touch the angle. It's way over here, while x does. So adjacent sides to 64 are the x and the 36. So if you remember our word, it's SOHCAHTOA. And if you're wondering about the spelling, everybody remembers TOA, the T-O-A. So O comes before A. So we're going to do cosine. We have adjacent and hypotenuse. So cosine of 64 is equal to the adjacent side, which is x, over 36. Make sure you write out COS and not just C. Multiply by 36, calculate it out on your calculator, and you get 15.78. On this one, we have the hypotenuse, and then this is the adjacent, this side is the opposite. So I'm going to use sine since I have opposite and hypotenuse. Sine of 19 is equal to 87 over x. Now a lot of students are having trouble solving this part. What you need to do is you multiply by whatever the denominator is. Same thing I did over here. I multiplied by 36. Here I'm going to multiply by x. So I have x times the sine of 19 equals 87. I want to get x by itself. So I divide both sides by sine of 19. 87 divided by the sine of 19 ends up being 267.2, which is a big number, but this was a big side for a small angle. Your answer should make sense. If you did this backwards, you're going to get a really tiny decimal, and there's no way that side is a tiny decimal. Okay, for this one, we have the opposite side and adjacent, so that's tangent. So tangent of 38 is equal to opposite, which is 45, adjacent, which is x. Cross multiply, you get x tangent 38 equals 45. Divide by tangent of 38. 45 divided by tangent of 38 is 57.6. So we have three different types of factoring problems here. The first type of factoring is just factoring out common terms. So I look at what will go into each one of these. 7 goes into 35, 7 goes into 7. So I could take out a 7. I have x squared and x cubed. I could take out 2x squareds. Then I have to ask myself, what do I multiply 7x squared by to get 35x cubed? Well, I'd multiply 7 times 5, x squared times x. If you take something out completely, I got to think, what do I multiply 7x squared by to get 7x squared? I multiply it by 1. Now some students will take what the common factor is and then divide it, and that's okay. So if you get stuck, you're not really sure what's left over. If I take 35x cubed over 7x squared minus 7x squared over 7x squared, and then reduce it, I will get that same result. So they get 5. I have 1x left over. This 7x squared over 7x squared equals 1. And you can figure out what's left over there. For this one, I look at my numbers first. I have 12, 18, and 30. 6 goes into each one of those. I have x squared, x, and x. So I can take out an x. I have y, y squared, and y. All of them have at least one y, so take out a y. That leaves me 6 times 2. I need one more x. I don't need any y's. I have 6 times 3. Don't need any more x's. I have one x. Need one more y. Here I took out the x and the y. So 6 times 5 will give me negative 30. Okay, so I'm going to actually do this one a little bit different this time. This is the final answer because I saw a number of students making a little mistake. They didn't realize 9 went into this. They thought it was only maybe like 3. So let's say you only factored out a 3. If you only factored out a 3, and let's say you thought, you only took out, let's say, x to the 7th also. Well, then I would have 9x minus 12x squared. Look at what's left over. If something's in common, you can still factor out further. So I could factor out another 3 and an x. That would leave me with the 3 minus 4x. 3 times 3 is 9. X to the 7th times x is x to the 8th. Look at this one. This is a good example. Again, a lot of students say, oh, I could put 4 in this. And maybe they did 4 and said, okay, I can take out p squared and a q. And if you did this, okay, 4 times 6, then I need a p. Here I took out both p squares. I still have a q left over, but 4 times 8. And then I'd have q. Then 4 times 2. And I took out p squared and a q. But notice how all these are even. I could take out another 2. So I factor out the 2, and then I will get this answer. So always check to make sure you've got everything taken out. Okay, also we'll be posting more problems just on factoring. So look on the video stuff for the factoring problems. They're all going to be in one video for 16, 17, and 18 that will go through some more of these steps. Okay, so this one, I got x squared. If I make my box, I have x squared, negative 24 here. If I multiply that out, I get x squared times negative 24 is negative 24x squared. These two need to multiply to give me negative 24, but add to give me negative 10. Well, if I look at ways of getting 24, if the last sign's minus, they're going to be different. So one side's positive, one side's negative. So it's really going to be the difference of the two numbers is going to end up equaling 10 versus the sum. If last side's a plus, then they're both going to be the same. Okay, so I got negative 24x squared is what I'm trying to get for these two when I multiply them together. Well, I could do 1 times 24. I could do 2 times 12. I could do 3 times 8, or 4 times 6. The dangerous one is the 4 times 6. If this was a plus, then I would use the 4 and the 6. Since the minus, I'm looking for one being positive, one being negative. So that's why I would put 2x here, 12x here. I need one of these to be negative, and I want it to be negative 10, so that one's going to be the negative. Then I can factor out an x. X times x is x squared. X times 2 then factor out negative 12, where I go x times negative 12. There's x minus 12 times x plus 2. For this type where you have one square minus another square, these are the easier ones. What happens is, and you can kind of check what occurs, when I multiply this out, this is going to factor x plus 1, x minus 1. If I multiply this out, you can check by multiplying. X times x is x squared. X times negative 1 is negative x. 1 times x is positive x. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. These two guys are going to add to 0. So we get that pattern. This has to be a minus, though. It will not work if that was a plus. Okay, on C, this one takes a little more thinking. We have x squared plus 11x minus 42. So I'm going to try to find two numbers that multiply to give me negative 42, but add to give me a positive 11. So again, if I started off with my rectangle, we had x squared negative 42. So that's why we got negative 42x squared. I didn't bother doing the rectangle because I already knew it would be negative 42x squared from that part. And I don't want to have to worry about factoring anything out. Well, if you're not sure what numbers you're going to be using, start making an organized list. 1 times 42 gives me 42. 2 times 21. 4 plus 2 is 6, so that's divisible by 3. So divide that by 3, I got 14. If I tried to put 4 in there, that does not go in evenly. 5 doesn't go in. 6 does, so 6 times 7 is another possibility. This is my whole list. Once these two numbers get bigger, one number on the left side get bigger than the right, then I could stop. Because next one is 7 times 6. I already got 6 times 7. But these two, they differ by 11. So if I put a 14x here and a 3x here, I want a positive 11. So make that a minus. Then I have x plus 14. Then I can, right here, have x times negative 3. Now I've got it factored. Make sure you write your answer this way, not just in the box. Again, difference of two squares. This one, 3x times 3x. This one's 4 times 4. Make one a plus, one is minus. Doesn't matter which order you have it. Okay, for the last of the factoring problems, this is where you're going to have to go through your steps. First step is look for anything in common between the terms. Well, this is 2x squared, so I've got even number, x's. I got no numbers here, so I can't factor any numbers. I got an x. Get down to the last one. Nope, there's no x's, so I can't take anything out to start. So now I'm going to put in 2x squared here, negative 36. Multiply these two together. I get negative 72x squared. I need two numbers that multiply to give me negative 72, but when I add them together, give me 1. 9 times 8, where one of them is negative, will give me the 1. So I put 8x here, 9x here, put a negative there. I can factor out 2x here. Then 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 4. You can either think about factoring out a 9 here or going x times 9 equals 9x. So you can use the factoring like we did for the common term to kind of figure out what goes from here. Then when I write my answer, it's 2x plus 9 times x minus 4. On this one, if I follow through my steps, I can factor out a 3 and an x to start. That gives me x squared minus 11x plus 24. So I look for anything I can factor out to start. 3 goes to all of it and x goes all. If you see it x cubed, you know you're going to have to do some factoring on it. So I have x squared and 24. This time the number is positive, so the two numbers are going to be the same. So I need two numbers that multiply to give me 24, but add to give me negative 11. I'm looking at this one right here and not the one above. You always want to make sure you do that step first, because otherwise the problem gets too hard to have to worry about factoring out a common term in the end. Well, if I look at my factors of 24, 3 times 8 adds to 11. They have to both be negative, so I have negative times negative will give me a positive. So I made this negative 8x, negative 3x. So to get x squared, I have x times x minus 8, x minus 3. Negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. Okay, for this next one, 4x squared, negative 50. When I multiply those two together, I got negative 200 x squared. So I got to think about two numbers that multiply to give me negative 200, but add to give me negative 17. Again, it's a negative, so one's going to be positive, one's negative. So it's really where their difference is 17. If you're not sure, you can just go through a list. 1 times 200, 2 times 100. 3 doesn't go into it. 4 times 50, those differ by 46. 5 goes into it. So if I did 5 times 40, these differ right here by 35, so still not quite there. 6 doesn't go in. 7 doesn't go into 200. 8 does. 8 times 25. 9 doesn't. 10 does. So I could do 10 times 20. And that's pretty much as far as it's going to go. Well, these two differ. If I take 25 minus 8, I'll get 17. But I want negative 17, so I'll make the 25 negative, and to keep the 8 as positive. So you can kind of figure out where it's going to be. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer list. Okay, so if I have this as 4x squared minus 25x, right here, only thing in common from going this direction is the x. Or I can factor upward right here. 4x will go into both those. Then I have 4x times x is 4x squared. X times negative 25. X times 2 gives me 8x. Negative 25 times 2 is negative 50. You should always go back and check to see if it works through. This one I go through first, factoring out common terms. 2 goes into each one of those. And x will go into each one of those. Y squared goes into each one. Factor out the 2, an x, and a y squared. Then 2xy squared times x will give me 2x cubed y squared. Here I need a 5, an x, I took out all my y's. Here I need 6, I took out my x's and took out my y's. So I have x squared plus 5x plus 6. Two numbers are the same. So I have 2 plus 3 equals 5. This was dangerous too because 6 minus 1 will give you 5. Then the signs would be different. That would be a minus. If you need to use a rectangle, use a rectangle. Okay, topic 19. This is about using inverse trig functions. So right here, I have adjacent hypotenuse. I have cosine of x is equal to 15 over 19. Now, on your calculators, I don't have a regular standard calculator with me, but to kind of show you on this kind of a calculator, make sure I'm in correct mode, I'm in degrees. If you look at it, we have right up here, if I can kind of get it focused in, you can see the little inverses right above. That tells me I've got to hit the second button first, or shift. So I need to undo this cosine. So I'm going to do second cosine, and notice that says cosine inverse, and I'm going to type in 15 divided by 19. There's my answer, 37.9 degrees. So anytime you're trying to find an angle, you're going to have to use the second button, or you're using the inverse trig functions, basically, or the shift button. That's when you have to do it, whenever you're trying to find an angle. You've got to remember that part of it. If you have a regular scientific calculator, do 15 divided by 19, hit enter, then do second, hit the cosine button, and it comes up with the answer. Okay, this one, here's your hypotenuse. I didn't have the hypotenuse, so it has to be tangent. Tangent of x is 5 over 7. I need to undo tangent, so I do tangent inverse of 5, 7, just like I did a second ago. That comes out to be 35.5. On this one, here's your hypotenuse. My adjacent, there's nothing there. This is the opposite. So I'm using sine of x equals 17 over 21. To inverse sine, you get 54. Okay, the last topic is actually applications with trig. So you may have to find a side, you may have to find an angle, you may have to do both. So we have right here that Pat and Justin are 50 feet apart. That's where the 50 is. on the same side of a 40-foot flagpole. There's my flagpole. Angle of elevation from Justin's foot to the top of the flagpole, so right here, that's what, oh, the Justin's foot's right here is 54. That's 54. And I want to find out what is the angle of elevation from Pat's foot, so this would be Pat right here, to the top of the flagpole. I'm trying to find out what x is. Well, in order for me to do this, I need to know what this side is and this side, or I need to know this side and this side. Well, I can figure out what the base is right here from this triangle. If I do tangent of 54 is equal to 40 over y, multiply both sides by y, I get y tangent 54 equals 40. Do 40 divided by tangent 54. That side ends up being about 29 feet. So this whole length then is 79.06 feet. I can do tangent of x equals 40 over 79.06. Do inverse tangent, I get 26.8. On the last one, the area of the canvas Leo's painting is 240 square inches, shaped like the triangle below. I want to know the measures of angle x and angle y. So area, 1/2 base times height equals 240. So if I do 1/2 base, my height was 30, is equal to 240. 1/2 of 30 is 15. Solving for b, I get b equals 16, so the bottom is 16 inches. Now, to find out what x is, I can do tangent of x equals 16 over 30. Do inverse tan, I get 28.1. If I want to find y, I can use the sum of the angles in triangle, which is what I did, so I got 61.9. But you could also do it this way. You could do tangent of y is equal to 30 over 16. And you'll get the same answer. You just have to inverse tangent.